Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish.Academy. This is our weekly Q&A, and our first question is from Kelly, and she asks, do you recommend using apps like Thumbtack, etc. when trying to build your clientele? How about promotions? And in general, Kelly, I don't have a problem with using any type of service in order to get your name out there, whether it's Craigslist or Thumbtack. Some people think, oh, that's kind of a lower end clientele base, but I think just practicing on some clients is always a good idea. I don't care where you get them from, just get your name out there. And in terms of running promotions, I don't think that's a bad idea. You could talk about something that you're doing at maybe, I'm not a huge fan of offering discounts all of the time because it kind of sets the bar, but you could have specials that you run or mini sessions or something that you want to do, and putting it out there is really critical and important to people, getting their eyes on it. Remember, marketing is nothing more than awareness, making people aware that you exist. You don't want to be the world's best kept secret. So any way that you can do that is good, but there is no substitute, none, no online substitute for face-to-face interaction, for networking and meeting with people so that they get to know you as a person and then they want to hire you for their business. Also, if you can start to identify who your target market might be, this is hard at the beginning, so you might not know exactly who that is, but if you can start to identify it and then find someone that's maybe a friend of yours that's in that target market and photograph them and do a really good job and make a good impression and share on social media and ask them to do the same, then that can go a long way for your business as well. What you're looking for is someone who is an influencer. So somebody who has influence or is a leader in their social group, and getting to know them and making sure they're in your target market, photographing them and asking them to share can go a long way. Because when people respect, admire, or look up to someone else, they are very influenced by their purchasing decisions. So if you find someone kind of that you're looking for and that can influence others based on your brand, there's no substitute for that. And also volunteering and just getting your feet on the pavement out there meeting people. That is the best way. I remember plastering my name everywhere, on every website that I could possibly put. At the time, it was like a free listing, and then ultimately I did do some paid listings briefly because I don't like to pay for anything, but just making sure that you're being seen. So it just gives you brand recognition and awareness. I remember that when I was doing about 30 weddings a year, a lot of people would hire me and they'd say, I see your name everywhere. And that's a good sign. So making sure you're taking advantage of anywhere that you can list your business is a great opportunity. But remember, there's no substitute for in-person networking. Hopefully that helps. Jen says, do you ever use frequency separation in Photoshop when editing? Negative. I do not. I know how to use frequency separation. I teach it. I have a free video on the blog with frequency separation. But no, I think you can accomplish the same thing with other methods much faster. So I'm all about the minimum effective dose. How can I solve a problem in the most effective and efficient manner? Frequency separation does a really good job in certain areas, but so do other filters. So no, don't use it. Know how? Don't care. Jessica says, this may seem like a silly question, but how do you handle or discuss with clients the editing of potentially sensitive topics like acne, scars, skin tags? I've heard a lot of photographers ask how to remove and adjust, but I was just curious if they or you ask clients first or just edit away. I wouldn't want to offend or embarrass someone or possibly remove something that they may see as a distinguishing mark. Thanks. First of all, Jessica, not a silly question. But second of all, I ask people. But be careful. I would not, get real close to their face and say, so what of that scar or that mole? You like it or you want me to remove it? No, I wouldn't say that. I would say, are there any features that you do not like about yourself? And what is it that you love? So someone might say, oh, I have this mole and I love it. Okay, well then that's a clue. Or someone might also say, I have a scar and I hate it. Could you please remove it? Well, absolutely. I would not just go editing away and remove things, because you're right. You could absolutely offend someone and they may not think it's a big deal. So some women, self included, would want you to remove my wrinkles in photos. I don't want to see any wrinkles. I want to see perfect skin, right? But then other people would be like, well, that looks too fake. I need to see the character in my face, and I'm okay with my wrinkles. So don't ever assume that you would like something or not like something, because at that point you are projecting. So we don't see the world as it is, and we certainly don't see the world as they see it. We only see the world as we see ourselves. So we are constantly projecting our thoughts and ideas onto other people, and you cannot do that. You just have to ask, hey, what do you love about yourself, or what don't you love about yourself? Do you have any special editing or Photoshop requests? Everybody knows what Photoshop is these days, so they kind of know what you're getting at, and they'll let you know, hey, make my skin perfect. I want to look amazing. Or they'll say, oh, I like this feature. I think the best thing to do is ask. Becky says, I get so frustrated editing photos on my PC monitor. What should I be looking for in monitors for editing? I was reading about size, bigger is better, panel type, panel coding, color gamut. It's all confusing. Agreed. I feel it is so important for editing. True. My monitor shows different colors from slightly different angles. Bad. I'm hoping this isn't a silly question, but I don't want to be misled when I go by one. Again, not a silly question. Hey guys, don't preface your questions with this may be silly, because then you're putting in other people's heads that it is silly, and it's not. Monitor calibration, monitor type is very important, because it will dictate what the colors look like on your photos. So it's critical. That being said, I'm a very technical person, but I don't get into the technical details of monitors. I currently edit right now on a 27-inch iMac. It's over there. Previous to that, I had an 8-core Mac Pro attached to a Dell monitor, and I loved that Dell monitor. I love Apple Cinema displays. They are beautiful. I just didn't feel the need to spend the money on one, so I had at the time, I bought this, gosh, it has to be at least 9 years ago. I had a 24-inch wide Dell monitor that I used forever and loved it. Dell has some really nice monitors right now. Big is fun. I mean, it makes it easier, especially when you have a lot of panels that you're using in Lightroom and Photoshop. It makes it easier to kind of put the panels on the side and work on the image. When I was shooting many weddings per year, I really, really enjoyed having my 24-inch Dell next to a 17-inch Dell that was rotated portrait. So what I did on that second monitor was I docked all of my palettes. All my palettes on my second monitor, just the photo on my big monitor. I loved working that way. So now that I have this 27-inch iMac, which has a fantastic monitor that I did calibrate, I love it. But I kind of miss the dual monitors, because I liked having my palettes on a separate screen. When I did purchase the Dell, the 24 and the 17 was like my cheap, oh, you know what? Craig has that exact setup right here. Let me show you. I'm gonna just twist this. See that right there? That's a 17-inch rotated portrait, and that's a 24 wide. And that's exactly what I used to edit on, and I loved it. The 17-inch was just a cheap monitor, and the 24 was a nice one. I think as long as you're purchasing something that's relatively new, I don't think you can go wrong. They're all pretty amazing right now. I happen to be a fan of Dell, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other good monitors out there. Again, depending on if you're PC or Mac, maybe you like the Mac monitors. I just couldn't justify the expense. So buy something that looks nice. Colleen says she just got a 27-inch Dell monitor. It's very nice. I believe that. Those Dell monitors are really nice. I'm a big Dell fan. Don't know why. Leslie says, what has been your most challenging experience with photography, and how did you work through it? Perhaps establishing a client base, the technical side, business end, creative, etc. I feel like I'm at an impasse right now, and I'm not sure how to break through. That's a great question, and it causes me to pause and think, what were some of the big struggles that I faced? I think the most important part of this, Leslie, is identifying what area you're struggling with and then sort of focusing on the area. So for instance, if you feel like you're struggling with business, then you would want to set some goals to learn more about business, whether that be an accounting, IRS, tax perspective, or whether that be marketing or social media. I mean, you'd have to identify like what is potentially holding you back. That's not easy to do. I mean, I can't remember who said it. Abraham Lincoln or someone said if I had to chop down a tree, I would spend, and I had an hour to do it, I would spend 55 minutes identifying the problem and then 5 minutes chopping down the tree. So this is a matter of identifying the problem and figuring out where you're stuck and what you can do to get unstuck. There were some areas that were a struggle for me and others that came really easily. So the things that came easily for me were marketing and getting clients. That was never a problem for me. Learning technically was pretty straightforward to me. What happened was I got into a creative rut because I did not understand my own need for margin in my life, and I just worked nonstop because I love what I do, and I got really burnt out. So this happened, now looking back, I can see it very clearly, but this was 2007. I was pregnant with Evan, and I was sick 24/7 for 9 months. Sick, really sick. I shot 30 weddings that year, and only by the grace of God did I survive. But I completely burned myself out. Well, when Evan was born, and then leading into the next year, I mean, I shut down. I had some serious issues. I just totally closed off. I didn't do anything with my business or work for a couple of months. Yeah, he was a newborn. I could use that as an excuse, but that's what it would be, an excuse. The truth was I had burned myself out, put myself into a creative rut because I just pushed it too far. Now for me, I think for anyone, the best thing you can do is know thyself. Know what makes you tick and know where your struggles are. So for me, I did not know where that line was until I had crossed it. And then I was like, whoa, I need to pull back. I can't do 30 weddings a year with 2 small children. I cannot do it. So I had to figure out a way to pull back on that. And I did. I raised the prices. It was a very simple supply demand. I wanted fewer weddings, so I raised the prices. But you know, it's a dance for me. Those boundaries I have a hard time with because I just go full force. And then I end up burned out and in a creative rut. And the only way I can get out of it is to sort of pull myself back, do something different, reevaluate, figure out what makes me tick and how I can move forward. So I've had those struggles, my biggest being burnout. The creative rut, the learning the art of photography was a struggle for me. So I spent a lot of time studying that type of thing. Again, the key here is identifying the problem or the struggle. I would spend a lot of time maybe journaling or in self-reflection trying to figure out what is holding me back. What is my problem? I have literally pulled out a journal and written down at the top, what are you avoiding and why? And I will just think on that and try to figure out, okay, what is it? And then how can I work on it? Kim says, I have done 2 bridal shows in the last month. First show booked 4 brides. Awesome. Second show only booked 1. Had over 600 registrants. How do I close on them quicker? I am emailing within 2 days. And then I can't see the rest of the comment, Kim. Closing quicker is typically about connection and follow-up. And really the best thing to do, I don't have any specific advice for that, except I read a lot of books and I listen to a lot of podcasts on selling and the psychology and working with people. So studying those types of things, trying to think of the book, Og Mandino, The Greatest Salesman in the World, is a good one. But just learning about the psychology of why and how people buy and where they're at in the decision process can help you close quicker. So I'd recommend looking at that also. Christine said, I always tell people I skin smooth. Oh, so we're going back to the question about whether you Photoshop out scars and such. I always tell people I skin smooth and make minor adjustments, but I don't usually remove things that are usually there unless they tell me, yeah, absolutely. So that is very good. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Kim and Leslie, it's very good. Nicole says, when shooting a family session, 4 or 5 or more people, how in the heck do you get all of them in focus when they're not standing in a line? I've read multiple articles on this and just can't nail it. I've tried increasing the aperture a bit, focusing on the closest to the camera, the shortest person, the frontmost person, the middle focal point, lining them all up, etc. Okay, this is a good question. So first of all, even if you had a group of people that were in the same line, So you would think, okay, they're on the same plane. They're not. There's always going to be someone who's a little bit forward and a little bit backward. So I select my aperture, which remember controls depth of field, how much of the image is in focus, based on the number of eyes looking at me and how deep they go. So let's say, for instance, I have 3 rows deep. If I have 3 rows deep, I'm always going to focus on that middle row, not necessarily the center, left to right. That's not what I mean. I mean middle, front to back. So don't focus on the person in the front, because the person in the back, 3 rows deep, will be out of focus. Don't focus on the person in the back, because the person in the front may be out of focus. You want to focus on that middle row, wherever that middle is, whether that's 3 rows, 4 rows, 5 rows deep. You want to be in the middle from front to back. Then you have to select your aperture on how much depth of field you need. How much focus do you need? Also comes into play distance, how far away you are. The further away you are, the more you can get away with in terms of your aperture and your depth of field. For instance, if I were to take a portrait of you with my 50mm lens and I was super close to your face, really tight headshot, and I was at f2.0 and I focused on your eye, your cheek would be out of focus from really, really tight, really close. Let's say I change nothing and I just back up. And now I'm getting a full body shot of you. Your whole body would be in focus because of the inverse square law, and distance matters here. So you have to keep that in mind. You can get away with more the further back you get. The closer you are, the more careful you have to be. That being said, if it's a large group and they're 3 rows deep and it's full body, full length, so I'm pretty far back or I'm pretty wide, I'm going to focus on that middle row, probably at 5'6", maybe 6'3" to be safe. My largest groups that I've ever shot, I've done f8, and I've shot them, focused on the middle person, and f8 has given me enough. I've never shot beyond f8 because I haven't seen the need to do so. I can see where there would be instances. So these are not hard, fast rules. It really depends on the situation. So you want to focus on that middle row, and it's aperture. It's all about your aperture, Nicole. Do you have enough aperture, enough focus to make sure that everybody's in focus? Again, don't focus on the front row, don't focus on the back row. This is a middle back to front thing, not a side to side center thing. So hopefully that helps. Ashley's asking, what podcasts do you recommend? I have a ton of podcasts, so I maybe need to think about this and list them. But my favorite right now, what I listen to, is Entree Leadership, because I love everything Dave Ramsey. Then I listen to Story Brand with Donald Miller. That's marketing. And then those are ones I never miss. I also listen to Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockrell. I am not one of those crazy Disney people. I am not. But I do respect their business model and how they run things. And Lee is the former vice president of Disney and for operations, and I've read all of his books and I really like him. And I like that podcast because it's short form. It's usually about 15 minutes, where like Entree Leadership can be upwards of an hour. So usually Entree Leadership to me is usually when I'm on the treadmill, because I love it so much. I actually don't want to stop exercising. Isn't that brilliant? Keeps me on the treadmill, so I'm exercising my body and filling my brain. So those are my top that I never. Oh, also Brian Buffini. These are all leadership, business type podcasts. And then there's a whole bunch of marketing and productivity podcasts, like the Productivity Podcast, Productivityist, I think it's called. The 5 a.m. Miracle Morning. Perpetual Traffic. I mean, I have a whole bunch. I have to look, but hopefully it helps. Okay, there were a few other questions that I noticed in the group while I was gone. So those were the questions that were listed yesterday, but I want to go through a few of these and just see if I can help answer a few more. I saw one. Oh, my friend Heather said, Mac users, what do you edit on? And do you love it? Laptop or desktop? Do you wish you had something else? I've talked about this previously. I really prefer and I recommend editing on a desktop. Typically, these monitors are better and easier to calibrate, and they're more accurate. Also, because it's a desktop, it typically does not move, and that means the lighting is consistent wherever you edit. So if you're editing on a laptop, number one, it may not be the best monitor. They're great monitors, but it may not be the best. And number two, if you move around when you edit, every session is going to look different. So if you edit one session in your office and then in your bedroom, and then your living room, and then your kitchen table. Oh my goodness, I think you're playing with fire. They're gonna look different because the lighting around you is going to be different. So I really recommend editing on a desktop. Now, that being said, I have indeed been proven wrong on this. I have a very good friend who edits on a laptop. Her photos look amazing. She edits all different places. Her prints come out great. So there you go. Not a hard, fast rule. Colleen asked last week, she had a question about what to save in terms of your photos. If I'm shooting a senior session and I shoot 300 images, am I saving all of them, even those I won't use? I'm not sure why you'd save the ones you don't use. Or am I just saving the ones I'm putting through Lightroom and editing and deleting the rest? Say I saved 30 out of the 300 I took. I'm torn as to what is the best use of my storage, or if there's an important reason to keep all of the images, even the ones I'll never use. Colleen, forgive me. I cannot think of a single reason on the planet to keep an image that you will never use. That doesn't even make sense to me. If that image has been rejected, it's been rejected for a reason. It will most likely never see the light of day. Delete it, reject it, permanently remove it from your working storage as well as your backup storage. It makes no sense to keep photos that will never be used. I'll never understand why people do it, because space is money. So you're actually spending money because of your indecision. That's not smart. I don't think so. So what I do is I narrow it down to the images I'm going to deliver. Let's say it's 30 out of 300. And as I am delivering those images, I permanently delete the rest of them. Why would I need to keep them? Now, not only do I permanently delete them, but I do so prior to delivering the images to the client. This is a very decisive strategy for me. I do not do this willy-nilly. I don't do anything willy-nilly. There's always a thought behind it, and it's this. If I deliver those 30 images and I keep the 300 and the client comes back to me and says, hey, you took this one image. I remember we were in a certain area and I don't see it in my gallery. Do you have it? And you say, let me check. Whoa, you've just opened a can of worms. Because if you say, let me check, that means there's more photos. And if you come back with that photo, if you say, let me check, and you find it and you say, oh yeah, I do have that, here it is. What do you think you're putting in the mind of the client? The client's thinking, okay, what else is there? And why didn't she give them all to me to begin with? And then it starts to get potentially adversarial, where she says, well, I want to see them all, because if you missed that one, what else did you miss? And you just opened a huge can of worms that you cannot close. So when a client comes back to me and says, do you have this image? I remember we were in this place. I can honestly say, because I cannot lie, I can honestly say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have that image. It must not have made the cut, and I permanently delete those, so it doesn't exist. And that has always been the end of the conversation. And in 14 years of business, I've never had anyone take it any further than that. You know what they usually say? Well, first of all, for them to come back to me and ask me about a photo that I took that they don't see is extraordinarily rare. Extraordinarily. And out of the ones that did come back and ask me that, once I told them they're permanently deleted and I don't have it because it didn't make a cut, you know what their response was? Okay, thanks. And they moved on. I cannot stress this enough. Why am I so passionate about this? Because I've worked with several photographers who have been involved in litigation with lawyers because they did not do this. And then the client, in the cases I'm thinking of, they were weddings. The client and the bride came back to the photographer and said, you took this photo, I want to see it. And the photographer said, let me check. And the bride said, whoa, I want to see them all, contacted her lawyer, and is now trying to sue the photographer in order to get all of the photos, or threatening at the very least. So then the photographer ends up delivering all of the raw images, and then the bride says, you know what? These 3,000 raw images that you delivered, I want them all edited, because that's my wedding and I want them. And you're editing photos where you completely blew the exposure, or somebody's eyes are closed, or it's just a ridiculous test shot of your feet. You're editing those for a client. You have to think through the potential implications of your actions if you do not delete all of those photos. And I am not going to play that game. I don't have time for it, and I don't think it looks professional. And they're not going to be disappointed. And if they are, it is extraordinarily brief. They say, oh, okay, thanks. And they move on. So I permanently delete all rejected images prior to delivering galleries. all the time. I never waver from that, and neither should you. That is my opinion, but that is my strong advice because I have seen this go very, very badly. Oh, you can choose not to listen. And then some of you will choose not to listen. And then in a couple of months, you'll call me crying because the bride is threatening to sue you. In one case in particular, I had worked with this client. It was a mentoring client of mine whom I adore. And it was an awful situation. And the bride was threatening to sue her. And I said to my friend, the photographer, did you permanently delete those photos like I've always told you to do and suggested? And she said, nope, I have them. Well, if you have them, then you cannot lie. You have to tell them what you have and turn them over. Woo! Be careful. Just delete the photos. They're terrible anyway. Why would you want anybody to see them? Okay. Roxanne, my friend Roxanne was asking, this has come up a couple of times lately, that's why I'm pulling it. She's asked how to fix a completely blown out sky. She just couldn't avoid it. And my response to that is, don't fix it. I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with the blown out sky. And if you look up into the sky and the sky is gray or dreary, there's no data there anyway. So I wouldn't work to replace that sky if that's not how it was. We have a blue sky today. It looks pretty. That means if I slightly overexpose, I could certainly bring back the blue in that sky with the raw file in Lightroom, no problem. But if it's not there, the data's not there, or it's blown, or it's an artistic style, who cares? I wouldn't even bother with it. Okay. Also, I have a question. It's not here, so I'm going to have to recall it from memory, but it's from a friend of mine, and it was in email, and she was asking about when do you have to report to the IRS your income if you are a hobbyist, and what is the transition legally from being hobbyist or from going from a hobby to a profession. So I was doing a little bit of research on that this morning just so I could make sure I have my facts straight. And I think what I'm gonna do is address this in an episode on the Flourish Academy page, which you should make sure that you go like because we do daily episodes. We're on episode 153 right now. So I'm gonna do that separately, but of course I'm gonna add a disclaimer that you need to seek professional advice from a lawyer or an accountant, but I did find out some interesting information and I think I'm actually gonna do that video today. So check over on the Flourish Academy page later to see about transitioning or what you can do. What are you legally allowed to do as a hobbyist before the IRS starts paying attention to you? Okay, I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.